I just saw Wicked. Is it any good? How many butter pumps will it get? Let's find out.
My baby likes butter
Hello, my beautiful butter babies. Okay, I think it's only fair before I begin this review to tell you that I am incredibly biased when it comes to this movie. One, I'm a gay man. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily automatically make me a lover of the source material or this movie, but I'm also a theater kid. So combining those two things together make me automatically biased about this and any other Broadway musical adaptation committed on screen, quite frankly. 3. My hands down favorite movie of all time is, wait for it, The Wizard of Oz. Debate Jesus, not me. Nothing even comes close to the perfection of that movie. 4. Many years ago, I actually read the book Wicked that all of this is based on. The book was so friggin' good, I almost read the entire thing in one sitting. 5. Even though I have only seen the Broadway musical once, I've listened to the soundtrack countless times over the years. Both the stage musical and the soundtrack are incredible. There is a very good reason this show is still on Broadway after more than 20 years. So I went into this movie with a strong bias towards loving it right out of the gate. But because the bar has been placed so very high for this movie, not just from the stage musical, but also from the classic 1939 movie musical, which, as I said, is my absolute favorite movie of all time, Fight Jesus, this movie had a lot to live up to. And I'm quite pleased to report it more than lived up to the brand reputation that preceded it. So let's get into it. First and foremost, this movie is a visual feast for the eyes. You know, I'm taken back to the original film when Dorothy opens up her front door after the crash landing in Oz, and this bright, luscious, deliciously colorful Technicolor world opens up before her. That's how this entire movie felt, like having that amazing experience over and over and over again for a little over 2.5 hours. Only with the technology being the way that it is today, imagine experiencing that Technicolor dream times a billion. At the very beginning of this movie, there's an aerial shot that quickly takes you from the Wicked Witch of the West's castle in the west, past the center of Oz where the Emerald City is, and on to the east where the citizens of Munchkinland have just heard the news that the Wicked Witch of the West is dead. And in that brief aerial tour of Oz from west to east, everywhere you look, there are flowers, trees, waterfalls, rainbows, fields of multicolored poppies. No, it was tulips. It was tulips. Just fields of multicolored tulips, the yellowest of yellow brick roads, and the greenest of emeralds in the Emerald City. The citizens of Oz, especially those at Chiz University and in the Emerald City, are meticulously coiffed and costumed in a way that screams Oz. Once again, I'm reminded of the scene in The Wizard of Oz where Dorothy and the gang get an Emerald City makeover. Remember the workers who did their makeovers and how whimsical and fantastical their hair, makeup, and clothing were? And the citizens of Oz, how incredibly, wonderfully delicious their hair, makeup, and clothing were. Now imagine that for each and every citizen of Oz in this movie. From the citizens of Munchkinland to the flying monkeys and the Wicked Witch of the West's castle, they all have that over-the-top quality about them that is completely immersive and could only be found in the Land of Oz. That over-the-top production design, costume design, and hair and makeup design can be seen throughout every frame of this movie from start to finish. Everything is whimsical and lush and bright and beautiful. You are immersed into this beautiful other world and you don't want to leave. Speaking of immersion, do yourself a favor and see it in 3D. This movie was designed for that kind of immersion. If you can see it in 3D, Butter Babies, please do yourself a favor and see it in 3D. You won't regret the experience. So for those of you out there who are uninitiated, this movie is a prequel movie to most of the events of The Wizard of Oz. It tells the story of Elphaba and Galinda, two students at Shiz University. They start off as enemies and then become friends. Unfortunately, one is destined to become a good witch and the other is destined to become wicked. It talks about their complicated friendship and how no one is ever really completely good or evil. We're all complex and complicated beings who sometimes do the right thing and sometimes do the wrong thing. And oftentimes our reasons for doing so aren't as black and white as one would think. One of the big questions this movie asks is, are we born wicked? Or is wickedness thrust upon us? It's also concerned with what we present to the world and if that's always an accurate representation of who we really are. The other major plot point in this movie is political. This movie tackles themes of femininity, feminism, racism, history erasure, fascism, and how all those themes are used to manipulate us by people who want to stay in power. As the wizard says in the third act of the film, the best way to bring folks together is to give them a really good enemy. The really good enemy the wizard is talking about are the talking animals of Oz. The talking animals have integrated themselves into every walk of life in Oz. They're doctors, nurses, nannies, politicians, and members of the military. Some are even tenured professors at Shiz University, a university founded by talking animals. For whatever reason, the wizard has made the talking animals out to be the bad guys. Is it to distract the good citizens of Oz from the reality that he is a con artist and is trying desperately to stay in control? Perhaps. But regardless of the reason they've become a really good enemy, the talking animals are being systematically rounded up and caged. Some are losing their ability to talk and are reverting back to their non-verbal selves. It's important to note, Butter Babies, that this musical was written over 20 years ago, long before our current political environment came to be. It did not shy away from the themes of racism and fascism and history erasure, the subject matter required of it. Nor does the movie. We can see how some of those themes are taking place in our political environment today. And this movie, while not overtly preachy in any way, does not shy away from those themes at all. It's just sad that perhaps this musical was way more prophetic than probably any of its authors ever dreamed it would be. So let's talk about the music. Even though Universal did everything in its power to shield the general public from this fact, it is indeed a musical. A two-part musical at that. More on that in just a minute. Every song from the stage musical is present and accounted for in this film. There's one or two songs that are expanded upon and given a little more time to breathe and introduce cameos. I see you, Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel, and I live for you both. But all the songs from the stage musical are here, and they are wonderful. Now, I knew Ariana Grande got her start on Broadway, and yet it's easy to forget that fact about her because she's most known for putting out banger pop music. I know I had forgotten that part about her history, and yet she has always had the chops to pull off Broadway music, and Galinda is not an easy part to sing at all. Yet here she is singing her heart out and giving us all the things we wanted and everything we needed. More on her acting in just a moment, but I really wanted to give her her flowers for pulling off a very difficult role to sing. Cynthia Erivo is a Broadway queen who always slays, so when it was first announced that she would be playing Elphaba, another extremely demanding singing role, I thought, of course Miss Cynthia's playing Elphaba, and she's gonna kill it, which she did. Defying Gravity, one of the signature songs, if not the signature song from the musical, is one of those songs that will indeed have your heart and emotions defying gravity as it carries you to a higher place where we all belong. Miss Cynthia had me literally crying and applauding in the theater when she sang it. Again, Elphaba is not an easy singing role to pull off, but man, does she ever do it. In fact, everyone does exceptionally well when they sing. Even Michelle Yeoh. Again, I'm not throwing shade when I say she's not the strongest singer in the world. She literally says that about herself. Plus, she's such a phenomenal actress, she makes you forget she's not the most phenomenal singer. All the music is well done, although I will say sometimes stage productions, musical or not, can struggle to be adapted to a movie format. And while by and large this particular movie avoids that, there were a couple of places where the transition from singing to dialogue and back again was kind of bumpy. Not enough to completely take me out of the movie altogether, but enough for me to mentally note, oh yeah, this is a stage production trying to be a movie. Like I said, it only happens a couple of times, and it wasn't enough for me to be completely taken out of the moment, but it did happen. Now let's talk about the acting. Going back to Ariana, I can remember scratching my head initially over her casting, only because I honestly didn't think she had the chops to pull it off, both musically and acting-wise. Yes, because Galinda is a mean girl and shallow and narcissistic, her role calls for someone who can camp it up. And I know Ariana has camp down. But as I mentioned at the top of this review, there is depth and nuance to every character in the movie, especially Elphaba and Galinda. They're not just one thing. And I didn't know if Ariana could be more than just one thing on camera. But man, did she prove me wrong. She gave Galinda so much depth and pathos and just downright realness. Yes, she was over the top and campy and silly at times because that's what those scenes called for. But whenever the scene called for her to let it all go and just be vulnerable and real, Ariana knocks it out of the park. People are saying she's the breakout star of the movie, and while I don't doubt this role is going to catapult her into another stratosphere of acting, I think it has more to do with people like myself underestimating her rather than her breaking out. I say that because Cynthia Erivo is in this movie, And anything Cynthia is in, she's going to eat and leave 0 crumbs, and this movie is no exception. She is absolutely amazing as Elphaba. She is effortless in her portrayal. You believe her and are on her side from jump and happily go along for the ride in her journey. As a side note, I am so glad they cast a non-white person in this role. Yes, I know she's green in the movie. The Wicked makeup team, by the way, should be nominated and win for all the awards, if for no other reason than her makeup alone is legendary in this movie. But because the themes of bullying and outsider and racism are so front and center, at least in the first 2 acts of this movie, it drives home the fact even more when the person playing Elphaba is a non-white person. Like I said, Cynthia ate it all and left no crumbs, and we expect no less from her. She did what she needed to do, and we're all better for it. Jeff Goldblum plays Jeff Goldblum, and that's not shade, it's just the fact. In this movie, he's playing a slightly more subdued version of the Grandmaster from Thor Ragnarok. An over-the-top con artist who has convinced everyone he's something that he is not. As time goes on, we make it a more nuanced take on the wizard from him. The Broadway script certainly can be interpreted in that fashion, but it doesn't have to be. So there is a chance he will take the character in that more nuanced direction in the second movie. We'll see. Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible. What a delicious delight she is. You know who she reminds me of in this movie? Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada. Madame Morrible is truly the HBIC, not only of Shiz University, but behind the scenes, she's pulling a lot of the strings politically in Oz as well. Who's in charge of Oz, really? The wizard or Madame Morrible? A really strong argument can be made for Ms. Madame Morrible. She is truly as cold, calculating, and controlling as Miranda Priestley is. She paid the cost to be the boss, and she will step on the neck of anyone who gets in her way. But, as I said in the beginning, no one in this movie is just one thing. Even though Madame Morrible does present herself as one who is in charge and not one to be played with, the depths of her treachery, manipulation, and control of the strings of Oz is not fully revealed until the last act of the movie. Her non-singing voice notwithstanding, Michelle Yeoh is truly phenomenal in this role. She absolutely kills it. Jonathan Bailey. You know, if I was forced to pick a weak link in this entire movie, it would be Jonathan. And it's not even because he's particularly bad in it. In fact, he's not bad at all. In fact, he's great. The problem is he has nothing to do. He checks the Prince Charming, in this case Fiyero box, off and creates the love triangle this movie calls for very well. But outside of a very fun musical number he leads, he's really nothing more than Prince Charming eye candy in this movie. Now, because I've seen the musical, I know he will have a lot more to do in the second half of this project, so I'm not even really dinging him for it. You know, in a cast full of greats, he just happens to be the least greatest of the great lead characters. I'm basically saying all the lead characters get an A+, and Jonathan gets an A. Like I said, he has a lot more to do in the second half, so I cannot wait to see what he brings. Speaking of the second half of this movie, it is indeed a two-part movie. While all the promotional material for the movie has avoided that fact like boiling STD, the title card states from jump, this is Wicked Part 1. I've been very open about my nervousness about splitting this movie up into two full-length movies. If you haven't seen it, watch my trailer reaction to Wicked. It's all there. And when I found out that not only is it going to be split into two full-length movies, but that the first one was going to be 2 hours and 40 minutes long, I really couldn't fathom how much padding would be needed to make that work. Let me tell you something, Butter Babies, right now, it works. There's a little bit of padding and some scenes that were blazed through in the stage production are giving just a little bit more air to breathe. But the movie never drags. It never gives you an opportunity to be bored or be distracted by your phone or wonder how much longer you're going to have to sit through this movie. It keeps you engaged throughout the entire film. And the time goes by like that. Regardless of whether you've seen the musical or not, the movie literally ends on a high note. Literally. At the end of Act 1. So it's not like it ends on a cliffhanger per se. It just ends where it needs to end to have a 15-minute intermission between acts. Unfortunately for us, we'll have to wait an entire year to get back to the show.
One eternity later.
Now, I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to discuss the director, John M. Chu. Have all of his movies been winners? Not at all. But to be fair, I really did love the Step Up franchise, of which he directed 2, I believe. Also, he directed Crazy Rich Asians as well as In the Heights. So even if some of his movies have been clunkers, one of his strongest through lines as a filmmaker is he knows how to lay out a visual feast for the eyes. And Wicked deserves that kind of eye for filmmaking. He had the writer of the book for the musical, Winnie Holzman, co-write the screenplay along with Dana Fox. So he had a good foundation to start with. Then he stacked the cast and it was off to the races. He will be nominated for Wicked. He won't win, but he certainly will be nominated. So how many butter pumps am I going to give Wicked? 5. Didn't even have to think about it, Butter Babies. 5. And honestly, the reason it's 5 is because of its rewatchability. I promise you, I am going to see this movie again over the Thanksgiving holiday. And since it will run well throughout the holidays, I'll probably go see it at least once more between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day. In fact, I hear that a sing-along version is going to be released on Christmas Day. So guess where I'm going to be? Defying gravity. Oh yes, honey. I am going to be singing out Louise in the audience on Christmas Day for that event. So, 5 butter pumps. The rewatchability of this movie is amazingly off the charts. It's also family friendly. Feel free to take the kiddos. A lot of the subject matter will go flying over their heads if they're especially young, but they will enjoy the visuals and the expansion of the Oz universe everyone knows from The Wizard of Oz. So now I turn it over to you, my beautiful butter babies. Have you seen Wicked? What did you think? How many butter pumps would you give it? Sound off down below. I want to hear all about it. Thank you so very much for watching, commenting, and subscribing. And I will see you in the next one.